I'm Alina, 25, female, and my half-sister destroyed my graduation celebration and then demanded I quit my new career to be her free nanny so she could become an Instagram mom. It sounds like a joke, but it was the catastrophic final act in a lifetime of her taking and me giving, and it was the moment the stage lights finally went out on our broken family performance. For my entire life, my world has been orbited by a chaotic, attention-devouring celestial body named Chloe. At 29, my half-sister still operates with the emotional maturity of a teenager, a fact made infinitely more terrifying by her being the mother of twin 3-year-olds, Leo and Lily. We share a father, David, a man whose spine seems to dissolve in Chloe's presence. My mother, Sarah, is a wonderful woman, a librarian who taught me the value of quiet strength and the stories we write for ourselves. Unfortunately, for most of her marriage, her story was edited by my father's pathological need to keep the peace, which always meant placating Chloe. The stage for this final act was my apartment. It wasn't large, but it was mine. A one-bedroom sanctuary that I had earned through years of sleepless nights, part-time jobs, and a fierce dedication to my dream of becoming an architect. Every piece of furniture, every book on the shelves, every carefully placed print on the wall was a testament to my own hard work. It was pristine, organized, and calm, everything my life with Chloe was not. I had just graduated with my master's in architecture, a degree that felt as heavy and significant as a foundation stone. My dream job at one of the city's most prestigious firms was waiting for me. I was on the cusp of everything I had ever wanted. This dynamic, this deep imbalance between Chloe and me, wasn't new. It was a well-worn path, trodden down by years of consistent favoritism. I remember when I was 16, I had saved for 3 months, working extra shifts at a local diner to buy a specific dress for my first formal school dance. It was a deep emerald green, and I felt like a different person in it. The day of the dance, I came home from school to find it gone from my closet. A frantic search led me to Chloe's room, where the dress was crumpled on the floor with a dark, sticky stain down the front. She had borrowed it to go to a party the night before without asking. When I confronted her, tears of frustration streaming down my face, she just shrugged. "It's just a dress. Relax." My father, hearing the argument, came in. I expected him to be angry with her. Instead, he looked at my tears, then at her bored expression, and told me to stop yelling at my sister. He made me apologize to her for upsetting her. I went to the dance in an old dress of my mother's, feeling small and invisible. Chloe never paid for the damage. The financial disparity was even more stark. Our father and Chloe's mother, Karen, had set a precedent early on. Chloe's wants were needs, and her problems were family emergencies. They bailaid her out of credit card debt twice, paid for a string of failed college courses, and funded her whims without question. Meanwhile, I was the responsible one. When I went for my undergrad, my father sat me down and explained the importance of fiscal independence. I worked 2, sometimes 3, jobs to get through school. I ate instant noodles, bought second-hand textbooks, and wore shoes until they had holes in them. My mother, Sarah, would slip me $20 here and there, her eyes full of a quiet apology, but her and my father's finances were constantly strained by the black hole of Chloe's expenses. I never complained. I was proud of my independence. But the bitterness was a low hum beneath the surface, a constant reminder of the different standards we were held to. The most glaring example came last year. My 10-year-old car, which I had bought with my own savings, finally gave up. The transmission failed, and the repair cost was more than the car was worth. I called my dad, not for a handout, but for advice. His response was blunt. "Well, Alina, you're an adult now. You'll have to figure it out." For 2 months, I took a complicated series of buses to get to my internship and classes. It was exhausting. Then, one weekend, my dad proudly sent a picture to the family chat. Chloe, beaming next to a brand-new, pearl-white SUV, complete with a giant red bow on the hood. The caption read, "Had to make sure my daughter and grandkids were safe on the road." He had co-signed the loan, put down a significant deposit, and justified it because her old car wasn't reliable enough for the twins. I stared at the picture, the injustice of it so sharp it felt like a physical blow. That was the moment I truly understood that in my father's eyes, I wasn't his daughter in the same way Chloe was. I was just the self-sufficient supporting character in the grand drama of her life. The graduation party was supposed to be a quiet celebration of my hard-won success. It was a declaration that all the sacrifice had been worth it. I wasn't just Alina, the student, or Alina, the part-time barista anymore. I was Alina, the architect. The thought was thrilling. I spent the morning preparing, a hum of happiness in my chest. My apartment was spotless, filled with the scent of lilies and lemon polish. The centerpiece of the entire event was the cake. It wasn't just any cake. I had commissioned it from a specialty baker. It was a perfect miniature replica of the first building I had ever designed in my first year of grad school, a modern, minimalist library. It was beautiful, intricate, and deeply personal. It was a symbol of my future, sitting there on my kitchen counter. My mom, Sarah, arrived first, her arms full of a thoughtfully chosen gift and her eyes full of pride. "Oh, Alina," she said, her voice catching as she looked around my apartment. "It's all so wonderful. You've done it. You've really done it." She hugged me tightly, and in that embrace, I felt the unwavering support that had been my anchor for so many years. We stood together admiring the cake, her finger tracing the delicate sugar glass windows. "It's too beautiful to eat," she whispered, and we laughed. Those few moments with her were perfect, a small pocket of pure joy. My father, David, arrived next. The atmosphere shifted immediately. Where my mother's presence was a warm blanket, his was a draft of cool air. He gave me a brief, one-armed hug and a perfunctory, "Congratulations, kiddo." His eyes scanned the apartment, not with pride, but with a kind of detached assessment. He set his gift on the table without comment and immediately started talking about a problem with his golf swing. I tried to steer the conversation back, to share my excitement, but it was like talking to a wall. He was physically present, but mentally and emotionally elsewhere. The knot of dread began to form in my stomach when he looked at his watch and said, far too casually, "Oh, Chloe and the kids are stopping by in a bit." The words hung in the air, instantly souring the happy atmosphere. My heart plummeted. I had very intentionally not invited her. This was supposed to be my day, a day free from the chaos and drama that always followed her. I wanted to celebrate my entry into a world of structure and design, not have it invaded by her signature brand of entropy. "What?" I managed to say, my voice tighter than I intended. "Dad, I didn't invite her. This was just supposed to be a small, quiet thing." My mother shot me a worried glance. She knew exactly why my blood ran cold at the thought of Chloe and her unsupervised toddlers in my pristine apartment. She had seen the aftermath of Chloe's visits before. My dad waved a dismissive hand, already annoyed by my reaction. "Don't be so dramatic, Alina. She's your sister. She wanted to come and congratulate you. Would you rather she felt excluded?" "Yes, actually," I wanted to scream. For once, I would rather she felt the consequences of her actions. But I swallowed the words. Arguing was pointless. He had already made the decision for me, for my party, in my home. He saw my hesitation as selfishness, not self-preservation. "It's just for a little while," he assured me, though it sounded more like a command. "Be nice, it's for the family." Family, that word again. For him, family meant my boundaries didn't matter. It meant Chloe's feelings trumped mine. It meant I had to brace for impact. My mom came over and squeezed my arm, a silent signal of solidarity. But we both knew the battle was already lost. The storm was on the horizon, and my father had just flung the door wide open to let it in. The beautiful, symbolic cake on the counter suddenly looked fragile and vulnerable. A premonition of the disaster to come settled over me, heavy and suffocating. My perfect day was already cracking at the edges. The doorbell rang 40 minutes later, and the sound was like a starting pistol for the impending disaster. I opened the door to Chloe, who swept in not with a congratulatory hug, but with a gust of complaints. "Oh my God, finding parking was a nightmare," she announced to the room, as if we were all personally responsible. "And this building has no elevator? Seriously, Alina, how do you manage with groceries?" She was holding her phone to her ear, mid-conversation with some friend, while Leo and Lily, her twin agents of chaos, darted past her legs and into my living room. There was no hello, no take your shoes off, no instruction to the children whatsoever. They were let loose like a pair of wild animals uncaged in a museum. Chloe kicked off her shoes into the middle of the entryway and continued her loud phone call, gesturing wildly as she walked around, inspecting my space with a critical eye. The destruction began subtly. First, it was the sticky residue of a juice box staining the cover of a coffee table book on Japanese architecture. Then came the small gria. See handprints on the clean glass of my sliding balcony door. I tried to intervene, offering the twins some coloring books I'd bought just in case of such an emergency. They took them, but instead of using the paper, they found my pristine white walls to be a far more appealing canvas. My mom rushed over with a wet cloth, her lips pressed into a thin, tense line. My dad just chuckled. Artistic little guys, aren't they? Chloe, still on her phone, paid no attention. She drifted into the kitchen, opened my fridge without asking, and helped herself to a drink. No, she just has the basics, she said loudly into her phone, a clear dig at my carefully curated selection of cheeses and wine. The tipping point, the moment the afternoon shattered beyond repair, was the vase. It was a beautiful, hand-blown glass vase, a swirl of blues and greens that had belonged to my grandmother, my mother's mother. It was one of the few things I had of hers. It sat on a small end table, a quiet, sentimental presence in the room. I saw Leo toddling towards it, his movements unsteady. "Chloe," I said, my voice sharp, cutting through her phone conversation. "Can you please watch your son?" She rolled her eyes at me, turning her back to whisper into her phone, annoyed at the interruption. "Hold on one sec," she muttered. It was too late. In the split second she turned away, Leo reached the table, grabbed the edge, and pulled himself up. The table wobbled, and the vase slid, falling to the hardwood floor with a sickening crash that echoed in the suddenly silent room. It shattered into 1,000 glittering pieces. The world seemed to slow down. I stared at the fragments of blue and green, the last physical piece of my grandmother, destroyed. My mother let out a small, wounded gasp. My father looked uncomfortable, finally seeming to realize things had gone too far. Chloe ended her call with a sigh. She looked down at the mess, then at her son, who was starting to cry. "Oh, oops," she said with a breathtaking lack of concern. "It was just an old vase, right? Gosh, Leo, look what you did, naughty boy." She scooped him up, not to discipline him, but to cuddle him as if he were the victim. I couldn't speak. A cold, silent rage was building inside me, so immense it felt like it was choking me. Before I could find my voice, a different sound came from the kitchen, a wet, smacking thud, followed by Lily letting out a gleeful shriek. I walked into the kitchen on legs that felt strangely disconnected from my body. The scene was apocalyptic. My beautiful, symbolic, one-of-a-kind graduation cake was face down on the floor. It had been pushed off the counter, and now it was just a tragic smear of white frosting and blue fondant. Lily stood beside the wreckage, her hands and face covered in cake. And in her free hand, she held a bright blue permanent marker, with which she was drawing a squiggly line across my white kitchen cabinets. That was it. That was the moment something inside me broke. The years of quiet resentment, of swallowing my anger, of being the bigger person, all of it evaporated. I looked at the ruined cake, the shattered vase, the marker on my walls, and I felt nothing but a vast, empty coldness. My celebration was over. My sanctuary had been violated. And my sister, the architect of it all, felt absolutely no remorse. The party was over. In fact, I was starting to think the family was over, too. The festive air in the apartment had completely evaporated, replaced by a thick, awkward silence. My father, finally jolted from his complacency, attempted to take control. Okay, kids will be kids," he announced to no one in particular, his voice strained with false cheerfulness. "Let's get this cleaned up. No big deal." But it was a big deal. Chloe's version of helping was to grab a single paper towel, wipe the frosting from Lily's face, and declare that the twins were getting fussy and it was time for their nap. "We should really get going," she said, already herding her children towards the door, completely bypassing the crayon on the wall and the cake-splattered floor. She offered a flippant, "Sorry about the mess, Alina." Over her shoulder as my dad hustled them out, eager to escape the tense atmosphere they had created. And just like that, they were gone, leaving behind a wake of destruction and me standing in the middle of it all. The party was officially, unceremoniously over. My mom, Sarah, stayed. She didn't say much at first. She simply found the dustpan and a broom and began sweeping the glittering remains of my grandmother's vase into a small, sad pile. I joined her, picking up the larger pieces of glass with numb fingers. We worked in silence for a while, the only sounds being the scrape of the broom and the crinkle of the trash bag. "I am so sorry, sweetheart," my mom finally said, her voice thick with emotion. She looked at the marker stains on the cabinet and shook her head slowly. "He never sees it. He just never sees what she does." "He doesn't want to see it, Mom," I replied, my voice flat. "It's easier for him to pretend it's okay than to actually deal with her." We spent the next hour cleaning. We scrubbed the floor, wiped down the sticky surfaces, and tried, with little success, to remove the permanent marker from the cabinet door. Every smear of frosting, every shard of glass, felt like a personal insult. As my mom helped me pack the ruined cake into a trash bag, her composure finally crumbled. She looked at the unrecognizable confection, the symbol of my achievement now just garbage, and her eyes filled with tears. "It was so beautiful," she whispered. We stood there in the wreckage of my kitchen, sharing a moment of profound grief, not just for the cake and the vase, but for the day that was stolen from me, and for the family we were supposed to be but clearly weren't. The next morning, the apartment still felt contaminated. A faint, sugary smell lingered in the air, and I kept finding stray crumbs in unexpected places. I spent hours on my hands and knees, scrubbing at the marker stain on the cabinet until my knuckles were raw, but a faint blue ghost of the line remained. I felt exhausted, defeated, and violated in my own home. My triumph had been trampled on and smeared into the floorboards, and no one was going to be held accountable. Around noon, my phone rang. It was Chloe. I braced myself, expecting a belated, perhaps father-forced, apology. I was wrong. "Hey," she said, her voice breezy and casual as if nothing had happened. "Are you busy? I need to ask you something." The audacity was stunning. "Chloe," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "before you ask me for anything, we need to talk about what happened yesterday. We need to talk about the damage to my apartment." There was a put-upon sigh on the other end of the line. "Oh my God, Elena, are you still on that? I already said I was sorry. They're toddlers. What do you want from me?" "I want you to take some responsibility," I said, my grip tightening on the phone. "For once in your life, this isn't just about a mess. You destroyed things that were important to me." "Fine," she huffed, her tone making it clear that she was the one being put upon. "I'll come over. We can talk about your stupid vase, but I still need to talk to you about something really important. It's about my future." Her future, of course. It was always about her future, her needs, her drama, my feelings, my property, my graduation. It was all just collateral damage in the ongoing Chloe show. "Fine, Chloe, come over," I said, a cold resolve hardening inside me. "We have a lot to talk about." As I hung up the phone, I knew this conversation wouldn't be about an apology. It would be about something far worse. And for the first time, I was ready for it. I was done being the quiet, accommodating one. The ground had been broken, and I was ready to build something new from the ruins. Chloe arrived 2 hours later, striding into my apartment with the air of a busy executive granting me a few moments of her precious time. She was alone, thankfully, but brought with her an aura of impatience. "I can't believe how hard it was to find a sitter on such short notice," she began, setting her oversized designer handbag on the chair. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of the lingering smell of cleaning supplies. Her opening salvo was a complaint about how my demand to speak with her had inconvenienced her day. I just stared at her, waiting. I refused to make this easy for her. I stood with my arms crossed, leaning against the kitchen counter where my beautiful cake once sat. The faint blue stain on the cabinet behind me felt like a battle scar. "Okay, look," she said, finally addressing the reason she was there. "I'm sorry about the vase and the cake. The kids were just out of control. I'll give you like $50 for it or something. Are we good?" $50 for a priceless family heirloom and a $200 custom cake. The insult was so profound it was almost comical, but I said nothing. I just let her words hang in the air, heavy and absurd. Sensing her weak apology hadn't landed, she shifted gears, her demeanor changing from annoyed to conspiratorial. She leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with a manic excitement. "Anyway, I wanted to talk to you about something huge, something amazing. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Alina, about my future, about the twins' future. I've finally figured it out." She pulled out her phone and began scrolling through Instagram. "I'm going to be a momfluencer," she announced, the word rolling off her tongue with a self-important flourish. "You know, an Instagram mom, it's a huge market. I'm good at this stuff. I'm authentic. People love me." She showed me her profile. It had a modest 400-something followers, mostly people we knew. The feed was a collection of slightly blurry photos of the twins in matching outfits. It's with long, rambling captions filled with hashtags. She spoke of brand deals, sponsorships, and creating aspirational but relatable content. It was a completely delusional fantasy, built on a foundation of laziness and a desperate need for attention. I listened, my expression unreadable, as she laid out her 5-year plan to become a social media icon. Then she delivered the payload, the real reason she was here. "So, to do this right, I need to be able to focus 100%. I can't be distracted by, the day-to-day grind of childcare. It's a full-time job building a brand," she explained, as if revealing a profound business secret. "And that's where you come in." She paused for dramatic effect. I felt a cold dread wash over me. I knew what was coming was going to be bad, but I was not prepared for the sheer, stratospheric audacity of her proposal. "It's actually a perfect solution for everyone," she continued, a triumphant smile on her face. "I need a full-time, dedicated caregiver for Leo and Lily, someone I can trust. And you're about to start that architecture job, right?" I nodded slowly, my mind struggling to process the direction this was heading. "You need to quit," she said flatly. "You need to turn it down. You don't have a husband or kids or any real responsibilities, so it's not a big deal for you. You can move in with me, or we can all move in here since it's closer to the city for my networking events. You'll raise the twins for me. For free, obviously. I mean, I'll be supporting you once the money starts rolling in." I was speechless. My jaw might have actually dropped. She wanted me to throw away my entire career, the dream I had bled for, the future I had meticulously built, to become her unpaid servant. She saw my stunned silence not as horror, but as consideration. She pressed on, trying to sell me on this waking nightmare. "Think of it as your contribution to the family, Alina. It's your duty to help me. It's just a small sacrifice for you, but it means everything for my dream. We'll be a team, the famous influencer mom and her amazing sister who makes it all possible behind the scenes. When I'm famous, I'll take care of you, I promise. This is a huge opportunity for you too." A small sacrifice. My entire life's work, my passion, my future, my independence. A small sacrifice. She had not only destroyed the symbols of my past achievement, but now she was demanding I hand over my entire future on a silver platter. The coldness inside me began to burn, transforming from ice into a white-hot flame of pure, clarifying rage. She had finally, truly, gone too far. I let the silence stretch. I watched the self-satisfied, expectant look on Chloe's face, the unwavering belief that her request was not only reasonable but generous. She truly saw nothing wrong with asking me to incinerate my life to fuel her flimsy fantasy. The rage in my chest didn't manifest as shouting. It became something much more potent, a crystalline, unbreakable calm. Without a word, I turned and walked to the small desk in the corner of my living room. I sat down, turned on my computer, and opened a spreadsheet I had created last night in a fit of angry, meticulous energy. I clicked print. The printer whirred to life, the sound cutting through the thick tension in the room. Chloe watched me, a confused frown replacing her smile. "What are you doing?" I didn't answer. I took the single, warm sheet of paper from the printer, stood up, and walked back to her. I held it out. "This," I said, my voice even and low, "is what we're going to talk about first." She took the paper hesitantly. It was an invoice. My name, address, and contact information were at the top, professional and clean. Below, in neat rows and columns, was an itemized list of her transgressions. Invoice for damages, CHLOE last name. Custom architectural graduation cake, $215. Replacement value, antique hand-blown vase. Sentimental value incalculable. $350 based on a similar piece from the same artist. Professional cleaning services for cake and juice, stains on rug. $120 estimate. Cabinet repainting refinishing due to permanent marker damage. $250 estimate. Personal labor for cleanup, 4 hours at $30 hour. $120. Total due, $1,055. Chloe's eyes widened as she scanned the list. Her face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and finally, sputtering outrage. "What is this? Are you kidding me? You're billing me?" she shrieked, the paper trembling in her hand. "This is family. You don't do this to family." "You did this to family," I corrected her, my voice unshakable. "You came into my home, disrespected it, and allowed your children to destroy my property. This is called accountability. It's a concept you've managed to avoid for 29 years, but the free ride is over." I took a deep breath. "As for your proposal," I continued, looking her directly in the eye, "the answer is no, and I want to be perfectly clear so you don't misunderstand me. It's not just no, it's never. It's absolutely not. It is the most insulting, audacious, and selfish thing anyone has ever asked of me. You want me to give up my career, the one I worked for every single day while you were failing out of classes that Dad paid for. You want me to sacrifice my future so you can play pretend on the internet. The answer is no." The color drained from her face, replaced by a blotchy, furious red. "You are so selfish," she yelled. "I can't believe you, after everything Dad and I do for you." I laughed. It was a sharp, bitter sound. "Everything you do for me? What do you do for me, Chloe? Do you support me? Do you respect me? You take. You take money, you take time, you take energy, and you take my things and break them. You have taken from me my entire life. The emerald dress, my peace of mind, my graduation day. You will not take my career." Just as our argument reached its peak, there was a knock on the door. Of course, she had called in her backup. I swung the door open to find our father, David, standing there with a worried look on his face. "What's going on?" he asked. "Chloe called me, said you were being hostile." "She's billing me, Dad," Chloe wailed, rushing to him and playing the victim. "She's trying to extort money from me after Leo had a little accident." My father looked from her tear-streaked face to the invoice in her hand, then to my cold expression. His shoulders slumped. The familiar disappointment washed over me as I saw him preparing to take her side, to smooth things over, to ask me to be the bigger person one last time. "Elena," he began, his voice soft and placating, "let's not do this. Your sister needs our help. Family helps family. This is what we do." That was it, the breaking point. The phrase that had been used to excuse a lifetime of abuse and neglect. "No," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "You do this, you enable her, you clean up her messes, you fund her failures. You are not a father to me, David. You are a bank and a janitor for her, and I am done with it. I am done being the responsible daughter who gets lectures on budgeting while you co-sign her car loans. I am done being told to be nice while she demolishes my life. You are not a family. You are a codependent mess, and I am formally resigning." As the words hung in the air, a third person appeared in the open doorway. It was my mother. I had texted her a simple message. "Chloe is here. Dad is on his way. I think this is it." She had come immediately. She stood there, taking in the scene, Chloe crying in our father's arms, me standing rigid with rage, the invoice on the floor. She heard my father's next words. "You're tearing this family apart, Elena, all over a broken vase." My mother, the quiet librarian, the peacemaker, the woman who had absorbed decades of this dysfunction, finally snapped. She stepped forward, positioning herself between me and them. Her voice, when it came, was not loud, but it was filled with the strength of a glacier. "No, David," she said, her eyes locked on his. "You and Chloe did this. This has been coming for years. I have watched you diminish one daughter to indulge the other, and I have said nothing. I was wrong. I am done watching. Elena is right." She turned to me, her eyes clear and resolute. "I'm with you." Then she looked back at her husband. "I think I'll stay with Elena for a few days." Chloe and my father stared at her, utterly stunned into silence. They had never, in their entire lives, faced a united front from us. They had always been able to divide and conquer, but not anymore. The foundation of their dysfunctional world had just cracked wide open. Without another word, they turned and left, the silence they left behind feeling more like a victory than any shouting match ever could. The days that followed were a strange mix of turmoil and tranquility. My mother, true to her word, stayed with me. We packed a bag for her from her house while my father was out, an act that felt both clandestine and liberating. In the quiet of my apartment, we talked. We really talked, for the first time in years, without the looming presence of my father's expectations or Chloe's needs. My mother confessed her years of frustration, the feeling of being trapped in a cycle of enabling that she didn't know how to break. "I felt like my job was to hold the pieces together," she told me, her eyes filled with a sad wisdom. "I never stopped to ask if the pieces were worth holding." That confrontation, she said, wasn't me tearing the family apart. It was me finally showing her the door out of the prison she hadn't realized she was in. It was the push she needed. Within a week, she had found a small apartment of her own, a new beginning at 55. My phone, meanwhile, was a battlefield. I was inundated with messages from my father and Chloe. They came in predictable waves. First came the rage, texts fill. Ed with accusations and vitriol, calling me selfish, ungrateful, and cruel. Then came the guilt-tripping, long, rambling paragraphs from my father about family duty and how I was breaking my mother's heart, a stunning lack of self-awareness. Finally came the pathetic attempts at manipulation from Chloe, pictures of the twins looking sad, with captions like, "Leo and Lily miss their Aunt Elena." I read none of them in full. I saw the previews, felt the familiar sting of their poison, and then I did something I should have done a decade ago. I blocked both of their numbers. I blocked them on social media. I erected a digital wall, firm and absolute. With the noise silenced, I could finally breathe. I walked into the gleaming, glass-and-steel lobby of my new firm on my first day and felt a profound sense of rightness. This was where I was supposed to be. I poured all my energy, all the passion that had been siphoned off by family drama, into my work. I learned, I designed, I collaborated. I was good at it. My ideas were valued, my meticulous nature was praised, not seen as a flaw. My career wasn't just a job. It was the life I had chosen and built for myself, brick by brick. With my first big paycheck, I didn't pay off Chloe's invoice. I knew I would never see a dime of that money. Instead, I went to a local artisan's shop and bought a new vase. It wasn't blue and green like my grandmother's. It was a fiery orange and gold, a symbol not of what I had lost, but of the new, vibrant life I was forging from the ashes. Months melted into a year. I thrived. My mom thrived. Her little apartment became her own sanctuary, filled with books and plants and peace. Our relationship, freed from the strain of her divided loyalties, blossomed into a beautiful, supportive friendship. We had dinners, went to museums, and celebrated my small promotions and successes. We heard snippets about Chloe and my father through the family grapevine. My mom's sister would call with updates she'd heard from a cousin. Chloe's influencer career had imploded spectacularly. Her authentic content was mostly just her complaining and trying to solicit donations. She was, by all accounts, deep in debt and blaming the entire world for her failure to become famous. My father was living alone in the big family house, rattling around in the silence, miserable and complaining to anyone who would listen about his ungrateful daughter and his stubborn wife. I felt a pang of something, not quite pity, but a distant, clinical sadness for them. They were trapped in a world of their own making, and they didn't even have the tools to see the walls. But the feeling was fleeting, quickly replaced by a wave of gratitude for my own freedom. The pain of amputating half my family had been sharp and real, but the health and peace I experienced in its absence was undeniable. I had learned the hardest, most valuable lesson. Family is not a free pass for disrespect or exploitation. True family supports your dreams, they don't demand you sacrifice them for their own. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. So, to anyone out there who feels like the designated, responsible one in their family, the one who is always expected to give more than they get, I see you. It's okay to protect your peace. It's okay to build your own future, even if it means leaving some people in your past. You are the architect of your own life, and you deserve to build something beautiful.